Hello and welcome back to Football 301. We are entering the playoffs. It's also the day after Black Monday that we're recording this, but we're not talking about the playoffs. We're not talking about Doug Peterson getting fired and Trent Baalke somehow managing to little finger his way and stay with the Jaguars, or the Titans firing their GM and keeping their head coach, or any of the assistants getting fired, Gus Bradley's head rolling in Indianapolis. No, it's awards time. We're going to talk MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, Assistant Coach of the Year, because we just like to have fun like that. And that we is me, as well as a three-man weave today for the awards show, because that is only fitting when we get into this superlative type of talk. First off, as usual on Tuesday, is my guy, Mr. Matt Harmon. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm coming off a bout of the flu, so that game sucked. But you know, no, I'm fine now. I would not call this my flu game. Maybe sounded like I maybe smoked a pack of cigs on the fantasy pod on Monday, but no, I'm doing good now. I'm doing much better, I think. So I'm nervous to get into this and see where you guys might differ from my picks, but I'm excited here.
That's my favorite. You even said it. Like, none of us put it in. We have a shared doc, and we always have our own kind of separate docs working, and none of us put any of our picks in for this, which is so great because I love the reveal. And the third person that's going to be revealing his selections is Mr. Verts himself, Charles McDonald. How you do today, Chuck?
I'm doing good. And I just want to make it clear that I'll never play a flu game. It's just not a thing. If I have the flu, I'm going to be so far away from you guys. You guys won't even know how to spell my name. So just for future reference, if you ever have the idea of asking me to come on this when I have a flu, don't. I'm dead. Don't talk to me.
Your DNP couch.
DNP couch penguin marathon.
Oh, have you?
I've seen the first two episodes now, and I'm about to get hooked on it. Yeah.
It's even better.
Yeah.
Good show. Very good show. Yeah. Saw Nosferatu, which is great. I told you that on Chuck on that on Sunday. I still need to see Wallace and Gromit to complete my Whiplash doubleheader, double feature that I want to get in there.
We're 30. We're watching Wallace and Gromit, Nosferatu.
After hearing just the creepiest movie I've seen in a while. But no, like I said, we're getting into the awards today, which is always fun. Some people like to jump ahead and get these done before week 18. I want to see the complete picture. I like pulling the stats once it's all said and done. So that way it just kind of gives it a little more solid feeling as we kind of dive in and break down our cases for it. But we're going to start with the main event. Let's jump right into it. The MVP, which has turned into everybody looking for stats on this one, wants to prop up with their argument or their favorite player, or wants to tear it down. I think on this show, we're just going to celebrate what a great season some of these players had. Matt, I'm going to start with you for MVP. Who is your most valuable player for the 2024 regular season? I'm sure this won't make anyone angry, so don't worry at all.
Oh yeah, totally. And I will say, I think it was a really tough debate, but for me at least, between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Those are the two guys that I debated. I don't think that's like any shock. I think that's mostly what the debate has been for a minute now. I do just want to say before I reveal the pick, I think it is very funny when we get into MVP season, you know, that certain fan bases like begin to tear down their own players to prop up their individual quarterbacks. That's been my most favorite part of this, especially, by the way, and Nate, I'm speaking to you directly here as a fellow Bateman bro, that, you know, Bills fans have been like, well, Lamar Jackson has Rashad Bateman. Like, you can't, I mean, come on, you can't compare these two guys. That's right. Great. That's great that 9 touchdown in 2024 Rashad Bateman is a part of like the positive equation for Lamar Jackson. That's great stuff. Ultimately, and this one did come down to the wire to me, and I was a little influenced, honestly, by week 18. I ended up going Lamar Jackson for this one. I just think he's played at just a different level than almost everybody else. Allen's been very close. He's had a ton of impressive signature wins, has Josh Allen. Again, like I said, close debate, but for me, like when you just think of what is the Ravens offense, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I think Todd Monken does from a design perspective. Obviously, you got to give a huge tip of the cap to Derrick Henry, but I mean, Lamar Jackson's just like playing at a different level right now, in my opinion. So he's the MVP this season.
Sound selection, sound process. I think the right final two. I don't think that's crazy for anybody. Charles, when you're looking at MVP, Were you coming down to the same two? And what was your selection?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm coming down to the same two. And no slight to Jared Goff, but I am glad we got past the point in the season where people were like, Jared Goff, MVP? No.
Right.
No.
Right.
No, he's just not.
There's a few of those.
Right. And I mean, we did the same thing like last year with Brock Purdy, where it's like, Brock Purdy, MVP, like you're just kind of waiting to the point where it's like, come on, this guy's not MVP. And then the Ravens game on Christmas happens. You're like, okay, we can move on from that. But I'm going with Lamar Jackson. Action Jackson, I thought he was the best player in football all year. I did get close like to picking Josh Allen because like the late season stretch was so insane. Yeah, particularly that like the 2-game stretch where they scored like 80 points or almost 90 points and went 1-1, but he went absolutely nuclear during that stretch. But I just thought the whole season resume just made me lean Lamar Jackson. 41 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, first in yards per dropback, first in EPA on dropbacks, first in EPA per dropback, 5th in success rate, first in explosive pass, 0.8 interception percent this year. He had the lowest sack rate of his career. I mean, it's weird to see like someone win the MVP last year and then come back like a clearly better player than they were the year before.
Right.
So
and that's a debate this year.
Right. Right. That's how good like the top 2 guys in this year's drawing were. But I think I'm just gonna go with Lamar Jackson just from start to finish. I think Allen might have had higher peaks, but start to finish, I think I'm gonna go with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to summarize it. I'll talk about some of those kind of, I think people played footsie even in the first half of the year with like, oh, Jaden Daniels, like the running back as the MVP. The Jared Goff one getting brought up, even Joe Burrow making the case the last couple months, and people are going like, well, if they make the playoffs, you got to give it to him. Even though some of those, that was just the Bengals team structure leading. What do you call them? Circus teams? Carnival teams?
Carnival
that's kind of what that's what the Bengals felt like this year. I know how you guys just broke it down, though. That's kind of, trust me, my preseason selection, and I there's more than anything I like in the world than being right, was Josh Allen to win MVP this year. I wanted it to be Josh Allen. I thought he made the best case he's ever had in his career, as far as wins, as far as kind of how the Bills defense played, as far as his whole evolution as a player, as a passer. I mean, he has a 2.8% sack rate this year, and he has the lowest pressure to sack rate on record. And True Media stuff goes back to like 2002. He has the lowest pressure to sack rate any quarterback that's played, which I think is absurd with how he plays. But it's Lamar Jackson for me to win MVP this year. Kind of already spoiled it. You kind of nailed some stats there, Charles. It's like you look at the numbers, you look at how he played. I mean, how can you not give it to him? First in TD rate, first in passer rate. It's like, it's really fun when you can do simple old school boomer box score stats, do the advanced stats, do the superlative narrative stuff, and it all just lines up. And that's how Lamar felt like this year. Like, TD rate, second in interception rate as far as low. Old school passer rating, he's first. He's first in QBR. He's first in EPA per dropback. So you got kind of like the boomer stat, the Gen X stat, and then the millennial zoomer stat. And he's first in all of them. First in net yards per pass attempt, which is, going for sacks and everything. Highest since 2014 among any quarterback. Second highest since 2008 among any quarterback. First in adjusted net yards, which accounts for touchdowns, interceptions, sack rate. First in QB rushing yards. So we were just talking about passing. He has 900 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. So, and even it's just not the high. I felt like his first MVP year, the first year that he started, a lot of it was big plays with the arm and big plays with the legs. Some efficiency stuff wasn't quite there yet. Shoot, he was like 21 years old. Of course, it wasn't there yet. But now he's top 5 in dropback success rate. They won games. I thought the defense didn't play well the first half of the year, played much better in the second half of the year, which we've talked about. But this is the MVP for me. And so I actually thought maybe one of us would maybe go Josh Allen, but if you do argue for Josh Allen, I'm not like squinting at it. I'm like, no, I get it. Like I trust me, it's a harder head thing going on here. I wanted to give it to Josh Allen, but I just think Lamar's season is just so overwhelming, stat wise, narrative wise. Guy, tip of the cap, Lamar Jackson.
It's the first season in NFL history where someone has had 4,000 rushing yards and 900 rushing yards, 4,000 passing yards and 900 rushing yards in the same season. Michael Vick never even really got close to that, because, sometimes the rushing would be there, but the passing wasn't. And even later with the Eagles, when he got the passing yards, he wasn't rushing for, 800, 900, 1,000 yards like he was with the Falcons. So to kind of get this peak, like where all of these skills are coming at the same time, is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And like you said at the start, like the fact that we can say, Lamar Jackson was better than he was last year, and Josh Allen also has a case to make the MVP this year. Like, you should just really appreciate that you were able to kind of see these things at the same time.
Yes.
And I just wish they were in different conferences, man. Like, you got to split up. You got to split up the quarterback talent a little bit, just a little bit. Because I was looking at like even the Pro Bowl stuff a couple of weeks or last week, and I just had like, it's like a duh realization, but you have Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Lawrence, Stroud, all competing for 3 Pro Bowl spots every single year. We got to split it up. Divide the league.
In maybe May in there.
Right.
I know. It's the NFC is like loaded teams and units, and it's like the AFC is the quarterbacks and the cast of characters around them. It's like such a funny kind of difference between the conferences. Well, plenty of playoff talk coming up, so don't you guys worry about that. But Lamar Jackson, Football 301's consensus MVP for the 2024 regular season. So we'll move on. We'll keep it on offense. And we're going to go to Offensive Player of the Year, which I think is also it got a little less interesting, maybe some of this stuff, but I do think this is worth diving into. Charles, I'll start with you. We'll go snake order here. Snake order is just for vibes. I think that's maybe the better way to put it. Charles, Offensive Player of the Year. Who's your selection for 2024?
Well, I recently, in the past few years, have decided to make Offensive Player just non-quarterback. Delete the quarterbacks from the award. You guys get all the MVPs. So we're going to give some shine to the other players on offense here. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I mean, man, 2,000 yards rushing, and it didn't, because sometimes when you have like these seasons where players accumulate a bunch of numbers, it feels like, oh my God, we're just dragging to try and get to a landmark and a milestone. But no, like, that was 2,000 yards, part of the game plan. We are running down your throat, building explosive plays, and I think when Saquon was in New York last year, there was this point where you're like, oh man, like, what if it's just too late? What if he got to the team with the monster offensive line and the quarterback running game right when he hits the ground or hits the wall of his career? Because the last season in New York, it was kind of hard to tell. I think sometimes with running backs this happens, and Josh Jacobs had it too. I think his last year with the Raiders. Is it the supporting cast around you, or have you started to hit a wall a little bit? I think we saw both of them. No, it was mostly the players around them that just weren't. It was mostly the
ecosystem. Yeah,
yeah. You look at the Giants and the Raiders this year. Oh wait, actually no, they still stink, and it was actually a big help for those guys to be on their new teams. But he was so dominant this year, and I also thought that this year it felt a little bit more technically sound maybe than some of his other years. Where I remember earlier in his career. And even like probably just very recently towards the end of his career with the Giants, he was a guy that was, I don't know if I see it, I'm going to bounce. I'm just going to see if I can get outside. And that'll work sometimes when you're 240 and you run a 4.3, that you can get away with a lot of things like that. But this year, it felt like he was more patient, seeing the holes better. I'm sure having better offensive line play in front of him helped. But being able to just like hit the seams inside, and then you're like, oh, wait, I'm still 80 yards free for a touchdown in the middle too. No, that was a special season. So he's going to get my Offensive Player of the Year award.
No, I no qualms with that. 2,000 rushing yards will do it, and that's with sitting out the last game. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive for anybody. Matt, Offensive Player of the Year for you in 2024.
I'm going to be accused of just sticking up for big wide receiver here, but I am going to go with Jamar Chase as my Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, just like, yeah, we've seen guys have 2,000 yard seasons before. You don't often see the Triple Crown being won, right. and man, that's what Jamar Chase did, and it wasn't even really close. 175 more yards than second place, which was Justin Jefferson, and that really dawned on me actually watching that Sunday night game where they showed Justin Jefferson's full season stats, and he's at just over 1,500 yards or something like that, and I was like, dang, he would have to, have the game of his life to really push Jamar Chase for the yardage total, and he obviously did not have the game of his life. Obviously, the Vikings got blotted out offensively in that game for the most part. He had almost 15 more catches than number 2, which was Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had 4 more touchdowns than number 2, which was Terry McLaurin. I mean, he was just clearly the best and most productive player at his position this year, whereas I think it was kind of close between Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry in terms of like the best running back in the league this year. And honestly, I just felt like something about this Bengals season had to mean something. It's because right now it's just like
there has to be a marker on this season somehow.
Something, yeah, something that means like that it meant something. Because right now it's just great season from Burrow, unbelievable season from Jamar Chase, and who cares? Like, they didn't make the playoffs because they have the worst defense in the league and all this stuff. So I'm giving them something here. I'm giving Jamar Chase Offensive Player of the Year, and I really do think he deserves it. It's tough to decide like who the best receiver in football is. I probably still go Justin Jefferson, but man, there's nobody that can take nothing and turn it into 6 points from a distance more so than Chase, who I think was just dynamic from not exactly start to finish, because he did get off to a slightly slow start because of the contract holdout, but that makes where he ended up, I think, even that much more impressive.
Yeah, Triple Crown's Triple Crown. It's just like with the Saquon argument. It's 2000s, 2000. And even was it a touchdown a game, 100 yards a game, like that kind of stat line is like, I always remember the 2003 Randy Moss season. He finished 111 catches, 1,632 yards, and 17 touchdowns in 16 games. I might add, but still seeing those marks getting cleared, it's like, you gotta anoint it. I'm glad you brought him up because he obviously made my final three along with Derrick Henry. He would be my third candidate in this as well. But better case than even I maybe thought going in. I thought this would maybe be a final two, and I was like, well, he got the Triple Crown, and then I kind of dived more into it. I was like, yeah, Jamar Chase did have a freaking awesome year. The deep balls, the stuff underneath, he's like one of the hardest tackles in the NFL at any position. Like, he breaks so many tackles. But no, great shout out. I'm glad someone gave him a shout out because that Bengals, like you said, that Bengals offense felt like it should be marked somehow, some way. Should have, I keep wanting to say asterisks, but I don't want to mean that in a bad way, like a good asterisk, like a little plus sign next to it. Like I mentioned Derrick Henry, so Jamar Chase, Saquon, Derrick Henry are my final three. Bijan would have been fourth, Bijan Robinson, who also had a phenomenal efficiency year on top of his counting metrics. But Derrick Henry, efficiency wise, I mean, first in yards per rush, second in first downs per rush. He finished with 1,900 yards, first in first downs over expected from Next Gen Stats. Having said all that, I still gave it to Saquon Barkley just because the 2,000 yards, what he meant to that Eagles offense, and just like when that was going, the passing game was going up and down. It's like, all right, things are going wrong. Give it to Saquon. And the fact that he could stand out on a team that has so many stars, and it feels like Saquon's team. And I know that's more of a narrative kind of gut feeling and all of it, but that's what it feels like, at least for this offense and the offensive line, I might add. Shout out Jeff Stoutland and that offensive line. He's first in yards before contact per rush, Saquon Barkley is. But knowing his talent level, I'm so glad, Charles, you talked about how much more of a straight line runner he was this season. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Because he did feel like he was always bouncing a little too much and maybe became a little more boom bust with the Giants. But I get that because what he had to work with there. So seeing him become just this like true running back, true explosive play monster, it's been really fun. Maybe the efficiency metrics aren't the ones I would like, oh, this is easy. Like, I really do think this is a 3-horse race to me. But I'm going to give it to Saquon because I just thought how he felt this year, how he looked this year, the counting numbers, gotta mark it somehow. So he is my offensive player of the year. Let's go. You guys want to talk defense? Move on. I'm actually curious where you guys are going to go with this. Matt, I'm going to start with you. We're going to go defensive player of the year. Matt Harmon, who is your selection? Kind of a wide open race. I know there's betting odds favor one guy, but I feel like this is a wide open race. You can make a lot of cases for a lot of guys.
Yeah, this is really difficult, I think, to narrow it down. But even if it is difficult to narrow it down to one guy, it is kind of a wide pool. I did end up with Patrick Surtain with a lot of conviction. Their number one EPA per play defensively are the Denver Broncos. He's clearly the best player. And I also think he is integral to what they are on defense, which is just, we're just going to play a bunch of man coverage and beat you up at the snap, and we're going to hope to pressure you on the back of that because we can. And I don't think they can do that without him. And I get the argument from some people that, well, look at some of the stats that the other corners have given up, especially when Riley Moss hasn't been healthy. It's like, well, then we just throw away from Surtain and all that. But nevertheless, like, still, if you walk in there with the number one wide receiver, especially if that's not a guy that can move around the formation and like take slot reps and things like that, he was just going to completely blank you anytime you went up into his coverage. I mean, there's not really a number one receiver that you can point to over the course of the season that got the better of him in any matchup. Like, yeah, statistically, you can say like, oh, look at Jerry Jeudy's numbers, but almost all of those came against the other cornerbacks. And like I said, I understand it's a little more difficult to to scheme out like a great edge rusher or something like that. But I don't think there was one edge rusher that really had that type of season that would make me go away from Surtain in this moment. And again, he's just, like I said, best player on the best defense. I felt pretty convicted to give it to him.
No, I feel like it's as good a case as anybody. I believe he's the betting favorite as we do this right now and was last week. So no, that I feel like it's an easy case to make for. Fun to talk about a DB again, potentially winning Defensive Player of the Year after it's been, I think Stephon Gilmore was the last corner, really. We've seen some safeties in there, but it's like a once every 10-year thing it happens. I always try to give as my dark horse Defensive Player of the Year betting pick. It's like, just pick a DB, like just because it's got to happen one of these years, and it might happen this year. Charles, Defensive Player of the Year, who's your selection for 2024?
I did the same. I went with Pat Surtain for the Broncos. I felt like I was looking through the players, and the more I started digging into some of it, it just felt like he was the cleanest selection for me. And then I started digging through, and I started looking at some of like his stats compared to some of the other top cornerbacks in the league, and man, like his numbers this year are absurd. From next gen stats among all DBs, he was fifth in the league with minus 24 coverage EPA. And I thought what was really impressive this year was his work as a tackler, and that is reflected in some of the numbers. So just looking at other top cornerbacks in terms of yards after the catch per reception, Pat Surtain is at 2 yards yak after the catch. Derek Stingley's at 4. Marlon Humphrey's at 3.5. We have Christian Gonzalez at 3.5. You've got guys at 4 and 6 yards yak after the catch. So, I just think that's really impressive because not only are you blanketing coverage, but when guys do get catches on you, usually the place dead right there, and you're not allowing anything after that. Right.
So that means you're right.
Yeah. You're close to them, and
but it's great. I'm so glad you brought up that stat because I was sorting through the same thing. And it's all the good DBs had the low yak per reception. And I was like, are we on to something here? But it makes sense. It makes sense when you watch it. It's like, oh, if you're close to him and he catches it and you tackle him right away, well, that means you were close to him. I don't know. So it actually makes intuitive sense too.
It also helps to be like 6'2", 215 with NFL dad genes,
and perfect technique.
Perfect technique. Yeah. So to me, he's just one of the things that made that defense go. Like I thought you really felt it on games where he wasn't there. So he's gonna get my depoy. I think that hopefully he gets it in real life, because I think it'd be cool just to see a cornerback win it, because I don't remember the last time that we saw that, unless my memory is failing me.
Leads the league in interception return yards too, so it's like he has ball production to go along with all this stuff.
That's what was nice. So I'll just jump into it. I had Surtain as well. I was kind of thinking maybe I'd be the only one. I know, but I'm surprised he actually swept this one. But like you guys kind of just did the same thing. I was leaning this way anyways, but then diving into stats, I'm like, oh, this is even a better year than I realized. And again, corner is hard to find the perfect stat. So glad Charles brought up that yak per reception, because it was the best among all DBs, not even just corners. Every DB in the NFL this year, that was the best number. It was the 8th best since 2016 among all corners. So he only missed one tackle attempt this entire season. I know we're talking about a corner. He had 46 tackle opportunities. He made the tackle 45 times. His 2.2% missed tackle rate is the lowest by any defender, any position in the NFL. Linebacker, D-line, corner, safety, anybody. The lowest. So on top of his coverage stuff, when he's in man coverage almost half the time, he is an amazing tackler. He's been like that since college. But the other stat I looked up, so I looked at yards per target, yards when he's targeted, yards allowed per targeted. He was 4th lowest in that, 5.5. But he was lowest among all corners in yards per snap allowed, because he doesn't get targeted a bunch. They run a bunch of man coverage, and in man coverage, if you're not targeted a bunch, that means quarterbacks go, I'm not going to throw it at you. I'm not going to throw it to number 2. 10.9% target rate this year, which is the lowest among all outside corners in the NFL. So, but he's 0.6 yards per snap allowed. Lowest among corners this year. It's tied for the lowest mark in Next Gen Stats database, which goes back to 2016. So 0.6 yards per snap. He's tied with A.J. Terrell in 2021 when he had that fantastic year. Chris Harris in 2016 when he was part of the no-fly zone defense, for the Broncos those couple of years. Jalen Johnson in 2023. Patrick Peterson in 2018. But all those guys, Johnson, man coverage 20% of the time. Peterson, man coverage 23% of the time. Pat Surtain, 40% of the time man coverage. So it's just a true lockdown corner, which we don't get a lot of. But I think your initial assessment on it, Matt Harmon, was that, where's your name?
Mart Hatman.
Mart Hatman was about he kind of was the best player on the best defense, and he unlocked what they're able to do. And I totally agree with that. And stats bear it out. Eye test, he's just a phenomenal player. Other guys I looked at, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, kind of the usual suspects. Micah Parsons, if he didn't miss any time this year, I think he gets it.
Call out.
Because he was even better when he came back from injury. It was unbelievable. And I know we've talked about this, but his effort is really cool. Like, for a guy that's so talented to play 190% on every snap is like, it's really infectious. Even when you watch like a bad Cowboys team and him like kind of really lift up that whole defense when he came back. Trey Hendrickson, I want to give a shout out to. Was the best player on a terrible defense and really the only good player for much of the defense. Chris Jones, I also want to get, he didn't have a ton of sacks, but he was very efficient as a player, very dynamic and everything. So those are the pass rushers I kind of grouped up. Did you guys have any other maybe short list nominations?
I for a second thought to put Micah Parsons here, just for that back half season stint where he came back from injury. It was absolutely insane. It's honestly some of the craziest like pass rushing play that I think I've ever seen in my life in terms of just the efficiency and the relentlessness, but didn't play the whole season, so gave it to Surtain.
He had 9 pressures. I'm glad I had the page up right now. It's perfect. He had 9 pressures when he was double teamed this year.
That's insane.
Most guys just quit on those plays, man.
Led the NFL. And he missed time. It's just anything, any number you look at, get off time. He tied for the league in pressure rate with Daniil Hunter, who also had a great year. I should give him a shout out. Just with 12 sacks in just that amount of time. It's just a phenomenal player. So yeah, I'm glad we're giving him a little bit of shout out too. A little bit of love.
I give like a tiny mention to Jalen Carter. I don't think he's like in this tier, but I think he's like maybe top of the next group.
He's getting there.
Yeah, someone that can get there. If he can, with the games he absolutely dominates, if there can just be, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 more of those over the course of the season, like then I think we're talking about him in this group. But it's tough for defensive tackles for sure.
It is. Yeah, unless you're Aaron Donald, because you're usually as a D tackle you're capped out 7-8 sacks. Like and that's what people are going to look at first, and then when you dive in you can find stuff. But yeah, it is hard. But no, great shout. He might win one in his career because he is. I want to see him in the playoffs now because he's going to be cranked up. Milton Williams also. Free agent this year. Also, I think he led the NFL in pressure rate from defensive tackles. So I wanted to give him a shout out too. All right. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to get into some more, coaches and front office awards, which that's why everybody tunes in to hear that one.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
All right, we are back. And we're going with the one that everyone cares about. That's Coach of the Year. This one matters more than anything. Any award that's more indicative of how a coach is going to do in their career is Coach of the Year award. Charles, I'm going to start with you. Who was your Coach of the Year in 2024?
I went with Kevin O'Connell, and I hope this isn't just a chalk pick for all of us again. But, dude, I saw Sam Darnold with my own eyes here in New York and in Florham Park. That's not the same player that I watched, 5 years ago. And I think just for that alone, you get Coach of the Year. But for real, like they had a chance to go 15-2 and get the number 1 overall seed just a few days ago. I know they flopped it and they kind of just screwed the entire game. But even as someone coming to the season, I think I had Kevin O'Connell as my Coach of the Year pick preseason. I was not expecting this. Like this is this is crazy. I mean, I think just the job that he and Brian Flores have done together, I feel like they just squeezed every single bit of production they can out of the group of players that they have on both sides of the ball. Because we've talked about it where, especially on defense, it's not like this is just like the most talented cast of characters that you've seen in the NFL. And on offense, they dealt with injuries on the offensive line. They had to throw Sam Darnold on the fly, and they still had one of the best offenses in the league. They still were one of the best teams in the league, and they had a chance to control their own destinies right up until the final week of the season. I don't think it's it's really possible to overachieve or do what you were asked to do more than Kevin O'Connell was this year. And I'm glad this year kind of feels like, in the past we've had Coach of the Year awards where it's like Matt Nagy wins Coach of the Year and you're like, yeah. But that was Vic Fangio's job. Like, yeah, Dable wins Coach of the Year because you're just skating by every week and winning by the skin of your teeth, and you get demolished in the divisional round. None of those really felt like those were guys that actually had like staying powers as NFL head coaches. But this is something that feels like Kevin O'Connell's probably going to be in Minnesota forever, especially if they can win some games in the playoffs this season.
There's teams trying to trade for him, apparently.
Right. And Mike Tomlin, too. The NFL's never been lazier.
They really have. I think they looked at the pool and they go, we have an open seat. There's only like 3 guys we like here. Hey, Kevin, you're going to be a coaching free agent soon. What's your agent think? No, I think Kevin O'Connell right now is the betting favorite. I have no qualms going to him easily. I think everybody's shortlist what he did in the Vikings. And even this happened last year, but like even hiring Brian Flores and just like going like, hey, everybody else is doing this defense. We're going to be unique and be really good on defense in our own way. Like, I don't know. That's just like an inspired hire, I think is a good way to put it. And I don't know if that's exec or a coach, but I'll give it the Coach of the Year. I'll tab that to him as well. Matt, how about you for Coach of the Year this year?
Yeah, mine's boring, and it's also Kevin O'Connell.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to clean sweep this one as well, too, but it's an easy case to make for him. And it's maybe a slightly neutered after the Sam Darnold game in week 18, but I think over the course of the season, we talked about this, Nate, last week, where coming off that Packers game, you really felt that was a quarterback in Sam Darnold that wasn't just, the joystick, I'm the extension of the coach on the field. It was a guy that had really been taught the position. Also, you got to give credit to hiring Brian Flores and the fact that that's one of the 3 best defenses in the league. I think that goes on his resume too. And it just feels like a very together team, both from like what they're doing on Sundays. There's a purpose to everything, like plays set up each other, certain guys route concepts activate other players, but also just the entire ethos of the building and the culture of everything. It feels like a very like forward moving, he's one of the I think he's flat out one of the best coaches in the league. They've also, I think, exceeded expectations, so it's perfect where it's not the Matt Nagy, Brian Daboll effect. It's also just a guy who's a really, really damn good coach.
Yeah, I think that's what it just comes down to. I think both of you guys' points, and I would agree with them, is that he's just an awesome coach. Like they have new guys in there or injuries, and it never just feels like where you watch these other offenses or teams where it's just like, oh, this is so sloppy. Like, oh man, that backup's in, and you feel it. It's like they always just had answers. They always find ways to get it done. The evolution. They
lost
of the
a great
Vikings
left tackle like in the middle of the season. After that, they had one of their best offensive stretches of the season,
with Cam Robinson allowing the highest pressure rate among all players. I'm going to keep repeating that stat because it might come up in the playoffs. It came up last week. So that, just got to remember that too. But he mitigates it. And that's the thing, is like, it's everything you guys are talking about. They're coaches, and Kevin O'Connell's the lead charge of this is they put their players in position to win. So, I mean, it's an easy choice. Having said that, I did not go Kevin O'Connell, even though
thank God.
Every instinct told me to. I think it's just because this is magnum opus. I'm giving it to Dan Campbell. I just think this Lions team, the injuries that mostly happened on defense, but the injuries that cropped up throughout the year, the personnel changes, like even offensive line, never skipped a beat. This team, the Lions are fantastic on offense, fantastic on defense, fantastic on special teams. That's another thing with too, and that is reflective of the head coach. I think assistants that they hire. I think the personality that this whole team has, next man up, but everyone again is disciplined and well coached. Starts at the top. Again, last year was kind of like that leap year for the Lions. Probably would have made sense maybe him get it last year, but I think this team is even more complete and just really the vision of what Dan Campbell's kind of drives. I mean, just even joked about this the other day, but even look at the receivers the Lions go after. It's like Tim Patrick. And like all these bully ball guys, because like that's what they want. That's the personality they want on their players. And I just think number 1 seed in the NFC, despite the injuries that cropped up throughout the season, just playing tough, beating good teams. I'm just going to give it to Dan Campbell. I would say Kevin O'Connell was number 2 for me. Like that was 1A, 1B, I would say, but I'm giving it to Campbell just because all the wins, the number one seed, just how that Lions team is. And I just think it's a reflection on him. I want to give him kind of the tip of the cap. I also had Dan Quinn in there, actually, as coach of the year. Andy Reid, and then I had the Harbaugh brothers as my other kind of like short list guys. I'm sure some fan base will be mad I didn't name their coach. Who else did you guys have on your guys' short list? Charles?
I had Andy Reid up there. 15-2. Yeah,
15-2.
Everyone's talking about how terrible this is all season. They went 15-2 and still had like a top 10 offense for a lot of efficiency metrics you look at. So, I mean, anytime you can position yourself to be the number one seed and put yourself on track for potentially defending a three-peat or enacting one, you should get some coach of the year consideration. I know there's some people who think maybe it wasn't his cleanest year from an offensive organization standpoint, and I would agree with that honestly, but you got here, man. You got here 15-2. You figure out a way just about every single week. And I don't know if people are really talking about them like they're real deal Super Bowl contenders. I feel like I haven't seen too much of that, but they are. I don't know if it's just Chiefs fatigue, which I get, but no, this team is definitely ready to potentially go on another run.
The exception that always proves the rule. It's like every stat I look at, it's like, yeah, Chiefs don't apply, but it's never applied for them once it hits playoff time. Matt, did you have anybody else on your short list?
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh is on the short list for sure. I mean, I'm gonna try to squeeze them. Yeah, right. Me, number one Chargers fan. I'm gonna try to squeeze them into something a little bit later, but he was definitely on the short list for sure, just because it feels like what else is the reason that team was like a perpetual annual joke and now is not. I mean, it's the Jim Harbaugh effect.
Yep. Yeah, you feel it. I feel like he definitely deserves double-digit wins. Like. Never had a week, even when they were outmatched, where it was embarrassing because they're just well coached and disciplined. So I'm glad we give him a shout out as well. We're going to move on to assistant coach of the year, which I think can get fun. Matt, I'll start with you. Who was your assistant coach of the year in 2024? My short list is about 10 long. So I'm curious what you guys went to.
Okay, I actually did not go offense on this one. I really wanted to give it to Liam Cohen. Obviously, I've been talking about that a lot over the course of the season.
I thought you were gonna.
Really strongly considered Joe Brady too from the Bills because like I don't think Brady gets enough credit for the way that Bills offense has functioned this season. They just throw so much at you. And I know he's taking head coaching interviews. He should be taking head coaching interviews. Offensively, those are the two guys I really, I kind of from a coordinator perspective was thinking about highlighting. But I ultimately ended up going with Aaron Glenn on this one, mostly just because maybe, again, I'm influenced by week 18. And maybe if I hadn't seen that game, I might have actually given this to the defensive coordinator on the other side of the ball and Brian Flores. But just what they've been able to withstand and overcome on that side. And maybe there's a small part of me that's like, hey, Aiden Hutchinson would have been defensive player of the year and I would have been right. So I'm giving myself some credit someplace here. But no, I think Glenn has just done a great job with keeping that unit true to itself, which I think is so impressive as a coach, because there's like, I thought the shot of him towards the end of the game, like on the bench, kind of with his arm up, like that should have been the thumbnail of that win for the Detroit Lions, because it was just such a hats off performance from an individual coach and an individual unit there defensively. And like I said, they have dealt with more injuries on that side of the ball, than you could possibly really fathom for any unit coming in. And it's been at all three levels. They've gotten some guys back, like Anzalone was back on Sunday night, and he definitely made a difference. But still, they've gotten contributions from a bunch of different players. The fact that they just take Amik Robertson, like a cast off from the Raiders, who was primarily playing as your slot corner, and hey, just go cover Justin Jefferson on over 80% of your routes, primarily in man coverage, and win that matchup.
We talked that game for 40 minutes, and his name never even came up because it was like, who knew he'd be such a key player?
And I think obviously that's a testament to the player, but I think it is a testament to the coaching staff too, to be like, yep, we believe in you and you can do this. And like, obviously, he's got like one of the quotes of the year, like what you can't bury what comes from the dirt or whatever is like his Instagram caption or something like that.
Oh, that was a bar. That was
great. I mean, come on, you got
to. They said you can't. They tried to bury me, but you can't bury what grows from the dirt. I was like, woof.
Yeah, that was better than the Geno Smith. Like they tried to what the whole like I didn't call back or whatever. Yeah, I didn't write back. Yeah, I mean, come on,
we're getting good ones every year.
We're getting good ones every single year, and yeah, I mean, we're getting great defensive performances like almost on a weekly basis from this Lions team. And I again, it's part of what you said about with Dan Campbell. I think has to trickle down to Aaron Glenn here. Just It's the identity, and it's every single week leaning into that philosophically, schematically. I think it's so impressive that the guy has dealt with this many injuries on that side of the ball. And it's like, nope, we're still just going to throw cover 0 at the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison 14 times in a game. That's unbelievable stuff.
With all of our starting corners getting hurt one after another, like, doesn't even matter. No, great nomination there. I really like that one. Great pick. Charles, what about you for Assistant Coach of the Year?
I didn't even pick a coordinator here. I picked someone that we've talked about a handful of times. Panthers offensive line coach Joe Gilbert. I love it. It's just one of the most miraculous coaching jobs I feel like I've seen from from where they were last year.
How bad it was last year
to where they are this year. I mean, dude, Icky's a functional player again. That's huge. And not only that, and maybe this is partly like just expectations, but when the signings for Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis came along, I was like, woof, $167 million for those two? Really? I mean, I don't know. But they were a good offensive line this year. They were honestly one of the best offensive lines in the league as it went along. And even you kind of saw a resurgence from Taylor Moton at points. They plugged in Cade Mays at center, who played well at times for them. So like the fact that you had not only these pieces that nobody wanted last year, you had some pieces that maybe people felt were overvalued that you signed in free agency, and all of it came together to produce one of the best offensive lines in the league. It led to a Chuba Hubbard breakout season. Bryce Young played better in the back half of the season. And I think that they just deserve a whole lot of credit for that offensive turnaround, because I don't think it was possible without the offensive line getting to the level that it did. So Joe Gilbert gets my Assistant Coach of the Year award.
Great shout out, though. I'm with you that as much as receiver help and Thielen getting healthy, obviously, and Adam Leggett and our guy, the coker coming in and everything.
I was like, which one is that?
I know. I was like, oh, shoot, I should clarify this. As I wipe my nose as I said it. And then Tommy Tremble, too. That was so inadvertent, too. Tommy Tremble, too. Like, that matters, an improvement on that end. But look at the pockets Bryce Young's throwing from. And there's been some creation plays, but look at how he performed against the blitz. And that's because I think it speaks to the trust he has in his protection, which matters as much as execution. You got to get to that final point, launch point. So I like that shout out. I actually looked at a few other offensive line coaches. I am biased towards them. Kevin Carberry for the Bucks. I think I could also say this is one of the most improved offensive lines. They've invested heavily in it, but how Gedecki has played at right tackle. He's turned into a legit good right tackle. Cody Mock at right guard has went from unplayable to solid. The left guard, Ben Brennerson, went from okay, yeah, sure, he's a fill-in to he's going to get paid this offseason, how well he's played. And on top of having a phenomenal left tackle, Tristan Wirfs, and a very good rookie center. But I do think I wanted to give him a shout out as well as Liam Cohen was also on my short list. Cliff Kingsbury, of all people, is on my short list because, hey, this is not what I was expecting, in any way, shape, or form. And it's looked good for a lot of this year. Vic Fangio, Ben Johnson. There's some special team coaches I'll talk about in a sec, but I'm with you, Matt. I went with Aaron Glenn. I went with the Lions defensive coordinator. Everything Matt said, and everything I talked about Dan Campbell, just the injuries, overcoming them at all levels. It wasn't okay, we got our corner out and that's it. Okay, how do we do this? It's starting corners, it's starting linebackers. It's our two best defensive linemen. They have others and they have stepped up, but losing Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson and then teeing off on the Vikings offensive line last week. They pressured Sam Darnold almost half the time. And then even when we were breaking that game down, Charles, I was trying to find some splits. Since they've had this injuries, they've dropped off this way. And every number stayed sticky. It was they went from 4th to maybe 6th. It wasn't a 4th to 30th, these drastic drops we see when teams have injuries. That speaks to what they do. They find just simple answers for what they do. They have a identity, which you talked about, Matt. We're going to run man coverage. All right, beat it. And then on first and second down, we're going to get big bodies up there, and we're daring you to beat it. And I just love that. It's a mindset. It was really cool. Aaron Glenn went to the Pistons game this week, and the crowd, they just kept showing them. The crowd would go nuts every time they showed them. I just love that. It's kind of cool when you see these fan base stuff. So I'm with Aaron. I have Aaron Glenn as my Assistant Coach of the Year as well. I just think I could have gone Ben Johnson too. I could have gone to the David Phipp, the Lions special teams coach. I could have gone any of these three and I would have felt good about it. But Vic Fangio, Brian Flores were other names, Todd Monken, Vance Joseph, plenty of offensive line coaches because I can't. Aaron Kromer from the Bills. Jesse Minter from the Chargers, defensive coordinator. Fantastic job there. But what were some, Matt, did you have any other guys on your short list on top of Glenn?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I ripped off like a few of them. It was Liam Cohen and Joe Brady were the two offensively that I really wanted to give it to.
Okay.
But I did go Aaron Glenn there. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And Charles, any others on your short list on top of Joe Gilbert, who was my freshman year offensive line coach at UCF? So it's a name I know very well. Yeah. Yeah.
Jimmy Lake? No, I don't have any more.
Oh. Bobby Slowick, anybody?
Good God, man.
Hey, you got another coaching interview.
Oh, boy.
You did.
Jets,
Just keep
of
the good
course.
times. Yeah, I know. They interviewed everybody. We'll move on to the execs. Charles, executive of the year for you in 2024. And you can, and also I want to say, you can interpret all these as you will. Some people like to look at this as like maybe the last couple of years, and this is like the culmination of something, or just the last calendar year, yada, yada, yada. But Charles, who was your executive of the year for this season?
Before I get started, I just want people to know award is something that I am like morally and vehemently opposed to. The idea that these guys should get any credit or love when they're sitting in their booth 100 miles away from the action, it's disgusting. But I will go with Brad Holmes. Specifically because I mean this to me is one of the it's just become a machine in terms of like personnel of the past couple of years, and I honestly thought like the Amik Robertson discussion plays into it because you get down to the end of the season, you got nobody left, right? And the signings that you had gone after were like largely working. Like you went after Carlton Davis and Terry Arnold, and your pass defense was a lot better than it was last year. Some of the draft picks you had over the past couple of years have come to fruition. But then when you get down to the end of the season and no one's healthy, and obviously the coordinators play, I think, a much larger role in this than Brad Holmes does. But to even have like Amik Robinson, somebody who you picked up, come in and just shut down a big chunk of the Vikings passing game, he deserved credit for bringing them in, deserves credit for bringing building one of the best offensive lines in the league, and IDing that talent, and that's as far as I'm willing to go for a GM. As far as I'm willing to
I like that. Trade for Darius Smith.
Yeah, it's like reaching to, it's like picking the prettiest snake out of the grass. Which one's not going to bite me the most? So I'll go with Brad Holmes.
Which one's not going to source me later?
Yeah.
Even going Zeitler for Jonah Jackson. No, I no qualms with touting him for touting Brad Holmes for exec of the year. A few years ago, I had him on my top 10 list for GMs, and it was just like, and that was felt hot takey. And now I'm like, oh, actually, it worked out okay. I know Campbell's got some influence there, but you're exactly right. It's just been
I almost gave it to Dan Campbell. I will say, I almost gave it to Dan Campbell's Executive of the Year award. But I decided not to be a huge
specific
today.
players they
Just
go
a
after.
small
I
one.
think there's a reason for it. Matt, what about you for Executive of the Year? And do you have any ill feelings towards execs like Charles does?
No, I want it on the record. I am very pro executive.
Look at this. The revolution will not forget this.
I am very, very, very pro executive. No, hey, Brad Holmes deserves credit in this. I like that, just for being the guy that went berserk when they took Jahmyr Gibbs, like that. Who, by the way, I mean, led the league in total touchdowns, didn't get a single mention in the offensive player of the year discussion. But yeah, I mean, he deserves some credit for that. But no, mine were the two guys I kind of debated between was actually two of my little pet favorite teams all year, which was Joe Ortiz of the Chargers, it's a little tough to, untangle him and Jim Harbaugh. I totally get that. But at the same time, the whole thing that they got criticized for is like, how can you pass up a wide receiver, at the 5th overall pick when you've got these historic prospects? You could just take Malik Neighbors and log out. Well, they got a guy in Ladd McConkey in the second round, 3.01 yards per route run against man coverage, led all rookies. He was almost on a per route basis as productive, if not more productive, than the guys up in the certainly than Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze, those other top 10 picks, but he was right up there with like Malik Neighbors, if not more productive than Malik Neighbors. And you still got Joe Alt, and you, like I said, this is a team that was not expected to do much this year, and they're double-digit wins. They go to the playoffs, the whole deal. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, even for just like getting J.K. Dobbins for like $150,000 or something like that, or $150,000 bonus or whatever in week 18. I mean, that's a great production there. But ultimately,
Will Dissly.
Will Dissly's giving him a bunch of snaps.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I did end up actually going with Jason Light, though, of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because, man, they got so much production from their rookie class this year. Bucky Irving on day 3 of the draft, easily the best rookie running back this year. Graham Barton at center. We've talked about that, Nate, when we did the rookie review a few weeks ago. Guy's been like a baller from day one, and a big reason why they've just completely revolutionized the run game from 32nd in the league this year to a clear-cut top 10 any metric you look at this season. A lot of that is because they just take this guy Graham Barton, stick him in the middle of the offensive line, and other young pieces there as well that have developed, but I think adding Barton's a big part of it. And then Jalen McMillan down the stretch, a guy that I will flat out say played really poorly to start the year, in my opinion, when you actually watched him play on film, but like 7 touchdowns since week 14. He's been a huge reason why that offense has been as good as it's been down the stretch. So we talk about the NFC South every year, like, oh man, what's going to happen in the NFC South? Is this and then the Bucs have just won it 4 times in a row. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
I am stunned because I also had Jason Light as my exec of the year, and I was really excited to like maybe go drop in some of that same exact stuff you talked about, but I went the exact same way for my exec of the year.
That's crazy.
Even just the Baker stuff, like all these teams are trying and finding a quarterback, doing the most outlandish things, and then there's like, all right, I'll sign Baker for cheap, and then I'll get a pretty team-friendly deal when I extend him. I'm just going to build an offensive line and a quarterback. Oh, what's that? You guys can't find a single lineman? I'm going to find 5. Oh, sorry. And I'm going to find a quarterback, and I'm going to find a running back that, oh, yeah, he's supposed to be our backup, but now he's going to go for 1,000 yards. Oh, and then what's that? We already have 2 good receivers. Oh, I'll find another one. And guess what? Sterling Shepard will do okay, too, when we need him. Oh, what's that? We need a tight end now? Kate Otten. Yeah, sure. Kate Otten will go there. Oh, Dane Perham. It's just all one after another. Payne Durham. I went Dane Perham. Payne Durham. But just and that's just the offense. It's just that they have depth, and maybe not a DB. Of course, they've faced a lot of injuries there, but it's just like every year they come up with depth and they find stars and they find like not just good players, but like I said, stars. Like Graham Barton is a star center. One of awesome center class, by the way. Zach Frazier is probably even better. And it's not because Barton, like Frazier and Barton are like could be all pros. But no, this is where I went to too. I just think drafting over the last few years, this year, getting real needle movers. And then on top of it, how he does free agency, how he just kind of finds little guys in the in-between spaces. Yeah, I just compete year after year. I'm going with Jason Light. I'm not. What would you listen to this morning, Charles, where someone said that they should sue the Bucs for Mike
Labor Talk show? David Sampson said that if he was in charge when that happened, he would have considered calling an HR attorney and suing the players because they already had the game won, so there was no reason to risk that record at the end, and it was unprofessional. So. That's someone who's definitely not a robot. Definitely not a robot built by like Jeff Bezos himself to come and tell us all what to do. Definitely a very, very real human being with human being feelings, you know.
I can't believe you said that. I was like, no way.
I had to rewind it because they're all like, what are you talking about? You would sue your own players 6 days before a playoff game because they tried to get their friend in
hitting a bonus.
Yeah, like okay.
I guess.
The only player in the history of the world who wanted to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer for 20 goddamn years. We're gonna find them. Okay.
Why don't you reward him? Well, this is he came from the same sport where they used to hand out a belt for how much money you could save in collective bargaining. So
incredible.
Other guys that came up, Howie Roseman. I think how they've remodeled the defense. I mean, honestly, just that stepping up. Some of the guys, Cam Jurgens now being at center. I know it's been a couple of years, and also I could say like Jeff Stoutland's talent identification should get a part of this as well. Les Snead with the Rams. Just this, I mean, last year I leaned that way a little bit, but even this year, all the rookie defensive players stepping up, and just they just always find a way too. I think I want to give him, and then Kwesi from the Vikings too as well. I wanted to give him a shout out too. We've got signing Van Ginkel, signing all these kind of some of our coaching oriented guys that they went after, but even just those guys too is like just how they find the right personnel. A little aggressive in the draft, so we'll see how that bites them. But for just this year, I wanted to give him a shout out as well. So that is it for executives of the year. We are going to take and coaches and assistant coaches. Who cares about them? We're going to take a quick break though, and we're going to come back with our Rookie of the Year selections. All right, we are back. Football 301. We are going to now do Offensive Rookie of the Year. Matt Harmon, take us off. Lead us off. Who is your Offensive Rookie of the Year for 2024?
Yeah, I'll get this takeoff here. It's Jaden Daniels. It's boring. Brock Bowers probably was. Well, no, he definitely was. He's like the best tight end in the league, and he certainly deserves mention here. I think it's a 2-horse race between those two guys, which is crazy because, like I said, those 3 receivers this year, and Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and Ladd McConkey were so dynamic. But it does come down to those two for me. And look, I know maybe this is just pure quarterback bias, but I'm sorry, like he's the whole reason that the Washington Commanders are in the playoffs. Is Jaden Daniels? He is the system. I think Cliff's done a great job there. I think you're right to mention him as one of the assistant coaches of the year, things like that. I think the offense has been well designed, but still, it's that doesn't look the same if you just take Jaden Daniels out of it. In my opinion, he's been that good from a rushing perspective, from a passing perspective. What he's done with Terry McLaurin, like McLaurin having a career season, is directly influenced obviously by the quarterback there. So for me, I think this has to go to Jaden Daniels just because, again, it's maybe quarterback bias, but like I said, this is the Washington Commanders we're talking about. Like they've been a laughing stock for a long, long time, and now they're like a very serious adult team that doesn't have like embarrassing moments either. I mean, especially what he did late in the Eagles game to win that one, and then coming it back with winning the Falcons game on Sunday night. He's shown up in big moments. He's been super clutch. He's been tough as hell this year too. Just so many things I think go in his favor for this one.
Yeah, they're the ones embarrassing other teams into literally falling apart after they lose to the Commanders. Like the Bears pre-Hail Mary and post-Hail Mary splits are the most drastic things you'll ever see. He is the Grim Reaper for some of these teams this year. It felt like Jaden Daniels was. No, I feel like that's one of the obvious choices for this. So yes, Jaden Daniels is Matt's Offensive Rookie of the Year. Charles?
I hate quarterbacks, so I went with Brock Bowers.
Good. No matter what, it's not universal, so that's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the part where Matt was like he was arguably the best tight end in the league is where I stop on the Brock Bowers stuff. You know, if he can be considered a top 3 player in his position, that's probably good enough for me to take Offensive Rookie of the Year. You know, over 100 catches, 112 catches, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. I thought maybe the rushing game stuff might, pop more like it did at Georgia, but it's a little tougher to run jet sweeps against NFL athletes. I think that's fair to say. So
no other threats on your team,
Right. And to me, like even Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
But even then, I like the fact that he was like the main target, main source of output. Truly terrible Raiders team, but that was not his fault. So I'm gonna give it to him.
Those are my final 2 as well. The other guys, like Matt said, the receivers, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd, Malik Neighbors, Bo Nix would just be right outside of there as well. But I looked at Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers. First for Bowers he was 3rd in receptions among all players, 8th in receiving yards among all players, 6th in receiving first downs among all players, not receivers, not tight ends, not rookies, all players in the NFL. I did end up going with Jaden Daniels though. Just one of those where long term, I still have some questions about how this offense is. Don't get me wrong. Maybe we'll see it in the playoffs. But for this season and how he played this season, the wins that came with it, even just numbers and metrics wise, it just was such a positive year. Like as far as just efficiency wise, he was 10th among all quarterbacks in dropback success rate, the 4th best rookie season among quarterbacks and dropback success rate since 2012. Had a year there since 2012, 4th in EPA per dropback, 5th in TD rate, 7th in net yards per attempt. And like when you just look at who else has had good dropback success rate seasons as a rookie year, it's Dak, Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck. Just above Mac Jones and RG3, though. So that's the tale of 2 sides here with that stat. But still, just him as a thrower has been so impressive as far as how accurate he is, especially underneath. Still want to see him push the ball and everything. But, I mean, he steps up in big moments, which is what you want. They have the wins this year. He has the Heisman moment with the Hail Mary. Just an exciting, electric player. I'm going to give him this, but I do say if you went Bowers here, I totally agree with that one too. But I ended up splitting it with Daniels. And this is not quarterback bias. I just think he had a good year. And I just think they won games. And he surprised me with I knew he kind of hit the ground running, being an older guy, an older rookie, but even just some of his answers he found at times. The Ravens game is the one that stands out to me. Throwing some stuff over the middle. I was like, oh, okay, you got that in you a little bit more than I thought. So also want to mention Drake May, 7th in dropback success rate among all rookies. So he's since 2008. So yeah, also just have to give that a little bit of shout out too. All right, going on to defensive rookie of the year, which I think is going to be pretty juicy to talk about. Maybe not, but we'll see. Matt, who was your defensive rookie of the year in 2024?
Yeah, I actually went Quinyon Mitchell just not to be boring because I kind of expected everybody to go with Jared Verse. I want to give a shout out to Chop Robinson though.
Yeah,
he was awesome. Like, I mean, just every time I'd watch the Dolphins defense, he stands out. He plays with a lot more power than I thought coming in. And I mean, just very explosive off the edge. So just wanted to give him a shout out because again, I think it's probably he's number 3 there between Verse and Mitchell. But to me, Mitchell, like as soon as they get back from the bye week, this defense was one of the best in the league. They're 3rd in EPA per play. They're definitely, I think, a top 3 defense there with Denver and Minnesota on the whole of the season. And the fact that he was just the best corner on the team as a rookie right away. I mean, this was a secondary that was just abused over and over again last year. And I get, obviously, there's a huge coaching change from Matt Patricia and whatever the hell was going on down the stretch last year to Vic Fangio. That's a pretty significant change there. They also have another rookie that's really good, Cooper DeJean. But yeah, I mean, he's up there in terms of like forced incompletions. He's 3rd in the league behind Sauce Gardner, Denzel Ward, and then Quinyon Mitchell among guys that have played 50% of the snaps this year. But he also allows the lowest yards after catch by a lot among those 3 guys too. So just a really good, solid cornerback. I wouldn't say he was like an elite player as a rookie, but it would be shocking if he was like an elite corner as a rookie. But I think the fact that, like I said, good starter on one of the best defenses in the league, clearly the best corner on the team, that moved me quite a lot for Quinyon Mitchell here.
Yeah, corner is very hard as a rookie. And if you are just average, like an average starter as a rookie, that's like, oh, it's almost like quarterback. Like if you're an average starting quarterback as a rookie, that is awesome. That's the signs you want to see. So I agree with you. I think at the very least, he's been above average. I would say good and getting locked down or getting tied up in a lot of one-on-one situations. They run a lot of zone, but for the outside corners in that system, it plays like man because they're locked on the outside guy. So great shout out with Quinyon Mitchell. Charles, what about you for defensive rookie of the year?
I went with Baltimore rookie cornerback Nate Wiggins.
That's a good shout.
That's a good one too.
Yeah. Cornerback, very hard to play. A lot harder to play when you measure at the combine 173 pounds. But
he's tough.
But he's tough, right? He's tough.
Yes.
He's tough as hell, man. Like you got to give him credit for I played this year, and like his role really picked up in like the last 10 weeks of the season when Baltimore had that massive defensive resurgence that has us looking at them as like, oh, not just a good team that has like an offense that's scoring anyone, like a real deal title contenders, a team that could win it all. Maybe the best team. According to Next Gen Stats, data provided by NFL Pro, Nate Wiggins finished 2nd in the entire league in coverage EPA with minus 28.4%.
Wow.
The only person who was ahead of him was Kirby Joseph at minus 53. So I'm going to guess like that's got to be
a couple picks.
There's a few picks in there.
When I saw it, I was like, minus 53. I was like, what the hell? But no, he's he had a phenomenal rookie season. He only averaged 2.2 yards per separation on throws using near suspender.
Yeah.
He averaged a 30% tight window rate, which was higher than Pat Surtain this year. He's a dog, man. And I was worried about the size, and probably still am a little bit, just based on like what we all know about the physics and nature of football. But still, incredible rookie season. I thought he was a huge part of the defensive turnaround. And then once you put him and with the way Marlon Humphrey played this season, you're talking about that's one of the better cornerback duos probably walking into the playoffs this year. So I think he's given them a big chance to actually get across the finish line and potentially win a Super Bowl. So for that, he's going to get my defensive rookie of the year pick.
I like that. I think you might be the only person that has that, but I don't think it's a hot take. It shouldn't be as big of a hot take as I think people might look at it as. So not a hot take, but just like a different take. He's been great. And him, that whole defensive shift from the Ravens, what they did with their DBs, and he's been a big part of that. I always liked him as a prospect. He started kind of dropping as the weeks went along in the process. And I think some of it was the size stuff, but I always just watched him. And I remember he, against North Carolina, because I watched so much Drake May tape, he ran down Amarian Hampton, the really good running back from North Carolina, and forced the fumble right at the goal line. And I was like, man, this guy's skinny and he is trying. Like his effort and all that tenacity and stuff stands out. So great shout out there, Chuck. I really like that. I came down Quinion, Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, all on my short list. Tavondre Sweat was on my short list. He had 10 stuffs this year. He's looking great. This is best case scenario considering what his reputation was coming into the pros. Braden Fisk, the kingpin for the Rams. Don't ask about him stopping the run. But as far as stopping the pass and as far as creating pressures, getting after the quarterback, he's already good at it and is probably going to make a living at that for a long time. Picked up plenty of sacks this year. Chop Robinson, I would say, came in second for me. Sixth among all players, all defenders in pressure rate, not just rookies. 6 sacks. He had the third fastest get off among all pass rushers in the NFL. Like that's his bread and butter. It makes sense. But I thought he would take some time to maybe develop some strength, like maybe kind of like be more down to down consistent. I knew there was going to be some third down flashes with him, but he's been more dynamic and just even a better down to down player than I expected coming out of college. So yeah, shout out to Chop Robinson, but I also want to shout out a little bit Chris Greer for exec of the year, not exec of the year, but exec honorable mention because just their pro scouting for Miami, Jordan Brooks, who they have at center, Aaron Brewer at center. I just want to, they bargain bin shop better than other teams. I just want to give a shout out to the Jonnu Smith, great call there. But yeah, just want to, they're not bad there. It's just a weird team.
Everything but the meaningless Odell Beckham signing. Everything but that. Got to get a few headlines,
They did get River Craycraft though, so Braxton Berrios, all those guys. But I ended up going with Jared Verse. And I thought I would talk myself out of this. I almost went Quinion Mitchell as well. Chop Robinson, those are kind of the other names I thought of, but Verse is who I went with. The metrics look good. His effort stands out when you watch him. This is how he played at Florida State. It's very infectious when you watch him. Like this guy's going to get, I don't know if he'll go Rasheed Wallace level tech level, like personal fouls, but I think I think he's going to get some personal fouls over his career with some of the effort and some of the stuff he does after the whistle. But I mean, his pressure rate was super high. I think it was top 10 among all pass rushers in the NFL. He was very good against the run, which is what I kind of expected him out of Florida State. I thought he'd be a better run defender than pass rusher, but effort, just his strength, his play strength. He pushes guys back in the pocket. He had the production, not overwhelming sack numbers, but good enough. I think he benefits a little bit from what the Rams do on defense, but versus my defensive rookie of the year, I just thought his underlying production was enough to kind of tip him over the edge for me. But I would say these other guys made it really close. You guys went elsewhere with this award, and I'm like, yeah, makes sense. I'm with you on that. So you're the DB for you guys for the defensive awards.
Yeah, Verse just felt too easy, honestly.
Right?
That's why I didn't pick him. I feel like I'm going to talk for like all the other stat picks. I just decided to go a little off.
I tried to talk myself into Fisk a little bit, but then I was like, you're against the run. It's just I can't give you defense.
He looks exactly like you thought, like exactly like he did at Florida State. You got some juice upfield, but he's going to get pummeled versus the run sometimes.
Yep. Any double team, he's done. And the metrics got to bear it out too. Thank you, Next Gen Stats, by the way. These stats are getting better and better every year. Also, Mike Hall for the Browns led all NFL defensive tackles and pressure rate. And that's all the discussion I'll talk about Mike Hall because I don't want to talk about him anymore off the field. All right. Wrapping it up today, though. Thank you guys so much for joining me for these awards. That was a ton of fun. We are closing it out. Charles and I will be back on Thursday to preview Wild Card Weekend. We did it. Postseason Week 1. We made it. I am Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice. Where can they find you, Matt Harmon?
Matt Harmon _BYB. Appreciate this. This was super fun, and I'm glad there was some disagreement. That was good.
That was good. I know the awards I thought we might get frisky on. We did, so I'm happy about that as well. And that's also that completed the triumvirate is Charles McDonald. Where can they find you, Mr. Verts?
You can find me on Blue Sky, 4Verts. I think I'm done with Twitter. I think I'm about to retire that account. It's just so terrible over there. Like, I can't find me. I was like, I used it for the other day. I was like searching for something in its Twitter search bar that I needed, and it was just spam and ads, and I was like, okay, this app's
That's
dead.
it.
It's about dead. Yeah.
I saw a tweet go viral about the NFL should change their lateral rules to match rugby because of forward momentum, and it had like 12,000 likes, and I was like, what are we doing here? This is the rule. And no one has ever had an issue with it ever because it makes sense. Lateral behind you.
Everybody has an issue with everything now. So
everything.
I mean,
every rule.
It doesn't have enough pushback on stupid ideas from anymore, so I'm out.
That's it. Yeah. Not enough bullying happened.
Correct.
All right. But if you want to send in your questions, maybe about the lateral rules, send those on in to football301mailbag at yahoosports.com. We'll get to those mailbag questions at the end of Thursday shows. Also, if you want to jump the line on the mailbag questions, I see a couple in there. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, subscribe to us, follow us, rate us, like I said. Watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. And thanks to Brett and Stone behind the scenes. Thank you to Madison as well behind the scenes. Thank you all for listening. See you guys on Thursday.
Woo!
Woo!